Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. In this one, we're going to be covering an important topic, the tier set bonus effects for all of the classes moving into the first season of The War Within. These set bonuses can determine whether or not your specialization is absolutely bonkers or a total flop, as we have seen from the previous seasons for Dragonflight, with things like Destruction Warlocks resetting their interdimensional rifts and just completely taking over the meta just because of that singular set bonus. So these are very important things to cover and to kind of make sure, are going to be appropriate levels of power for all of the classes, especially the ones that are on the weaker ends, not to mention just the powerful ends. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, then smash that subscribe button so that you never miss a beat and you stay ahead of the competition. Let's get started here because we've got a lot to cover. For the Blood Death Knights, you're going to have your set bonuses focusing around Bone Shield. When you have one or more charges, the damage you take is going to be reduced by 2%. Losing a Bone Shield charge is going to have a chance to reduce the damage you take by an additional 1%, up to 3, so just a very minor amount of damage reduction. Your 4 set bonus is going to be your damage is increased by 1% per active Bone Shield charge, and taking damage while below 6 has a chance to just generate you automatic Bone Shield charges. There's going to be a lot of really fun stuff with Blood Death Knight, since you just got like a complete rework. You're getting basically all the most overpowered things for Blood Death Knight tanks basically throughout the history of the game, all happening at the same time. And I see this set bonus having a lot of synergy for that build, for making it really fun in PvE. It might sneak in possibly in PvP as well, in terms of being potentially a powerhouse, but I'm kind of leaning on the side of it probably won't. But PvE, it looks like it's going to be really fun. For Frost Death Knights, your runic power spending abilities are just going to deal 8% increased damage, so things like the Frost Strike. Consuming runic power has a chance to increase your strength by 10%. I really like these two. These are focused around sustained damage outside of your Pillar of Frost and just making your damage feel powerful in more windows of opportunity, so that you're not just pigeonholed into these one specific kind of gimmick moments when playing it, whether it's PvE with Breath of Cindergosa or PvP when you're trying to set up that big one shot. And I've really liked the direction so far for Frost Death Knight. It's likely going to have a really good shot to feel as good as Destro did when Destro got its rework following these similar types of lines. So I think these are solid set bonuses overall, and likely going to assist with Frost Death Knight's rework here moving into the War Within. For Unholy, you're just going to get 8% minion damage increase, and you got a lot of those. So this is a really big number, especially if you're running the 4 Horsemen. You're summoning in the Abomination now, which is a PvE talent. You are going to have so many demons. You can proc in Maguses of the Dead as well to shoot AoE Shadow Bolts, so that's going to have a really high scaling of value on it. Death Knight in general just looks really broken. You've got like team-wide anti-magic shield. It can cleanse all of the dots. Melee DPS are looking ludicrous at the moment, to be honest. I'm going to have a bunch of videos coming out with the gameplay covering you and showing all this stuff as well, but it's looking really crazy for Death Knights. When you summon a minion, your haste is increased by 2% for up to 8% for 8 seconds, and you're going to be summoning in a lot of those, so this is really good. It fits in well with the fantasy for it. I don't see this necessarily being like completely over the top either. Just a really solid set bonus, it seems, all around for the Death Knight class across all 3 specializations. Moving now into Demon Hunter, we get into more Broken Land. For the 2-piece bonus, you're just getting 20% more Blade Dance damage, and for your 4-piece, you're getting 20% more Chaos Strike damage, and it will have a 25% chance to reset the cooldown of Blade Dance. And it's that cooldown reduction that is going to be really powerful and likely push Havoc over the top, because these are just tuning knobs, right? This is just 10% more on each of these, but this reset can give you a disgusting amount of damage, especially if you're in meta and you're getting these resets on your Blade Dance. It's gonna mow people down. I think it's gonna absolutely mow people down. So this one was a big outlier in terms of being really powerful and potentially triggering some alarms for classes moving into the next expansion. For Vengeance, Soul Cleave deals 15% increased damage and has a 35% chance to shatter 1 lesser soul fragment from a target it hits. And 4-piece bonus, consuming a soul fragment increases the damage and healing of your next Fel Devastation by 2% up to 3%, giving you some nice kind of burst AoE. Although I've got very limited experience in PvE with Vengeance. I played a little bit in Mythic Plus at the end of BFA. I don't know if you're still just trying to spam this on cooldown and if you'll have enough time to really get a bunch of stacks for this, but Fel Devastation is a really fun spell to press, so buffing this by 30% is likely going to be really fun. In PvE, I don't know if I see, Soul Cleave damage going over the top to see Vengeance in PvP in any situations, but it seems like it's targeting abilities that are going to give you some valuable throughput and likely be fun here. So I think these are decent set bonuses all around for Demon Hunter. Just this cooldown reduction, probably likely going to be over the top in PvP at least. Now for Druid, for Boomkin, your 2-piece bonus is just flat out 8% Star Surge damage and 10% Starfall damage. pretty basic, similar to what we've seen from the other set bonuses above. I don't think they wanted to go over the top with these set bonuses. They made a note to say that they don't want this to affect like what hero talents you're picking. They want you to be able to explore all the new talent reworks and hero talents independently, and the set bonuses are going to be a little bit lighter on this side. So you might be thinking like some of these seem boring, but it's because they're deliberately going on the lighter side. Now, I would say the 4-piece though is really too light. Lunar Eclipse and Solar Eclipse each increases the Astral Power Wrath generates by 1, and Starfire generates by 2. And I don't know if those numbers are placeholders, but like that is not enough to make me like PogChamp over pressing Wrath or Starfire. Like these numbers, I mean, if this is what it's going to be, where you get more Astral Power generation from each of these in Eclipse, these numbers, I don't know. I mean, maybe they're thinking because it's like Cleave Starfire in PvE, and maybe Cleave Starfire will actually generate a decent amount of this, but I'm thinking you're probably just not going to run the 4-piece. You're probably just going to only run the 2-piece if it remains like this, at least in PvP. For Feral Druids, Tiger Fury is going to increase your critical strike, chance to critical strike for 10 seconds, starting at 6% and increasing by 1 every 2. Now, in PvP, set bonuses that focus around critical strike generally are less valuable because crit modifiers are reduced in PvP specifically, so this is already maybe not going to be amazing there. But in PvE, this is just going to amplify the new hero talent builds for you specifically, like the Lashing Vines is you're going to be applying more bleeds to the target, and they're all going to be critting, so that's probably going to be pretty fun in PvE. Critical strikes with your combo point generating abilities increase the direct damage of your next Ferocious Bite and Rampant Fury or Primal Wrath by 15%, psychic up to 3 times. Now, okay, so now it's got great synergy between this. This was thinking a little bit lackluster, but now it's flat out damage enhancements towards Ferocious Bite for single target builds or Primal Wrath for AoE builds. So this set bonus looks really fun. I think that this could likely be really strong in any part of the game, PvE or PvP. I really like the synergy between these two. I think this is a solid one. This is just making me think that the Boomkin one needs another Passover because some of these other ones are looking really solid. For Guardian Druid, Thrash and Moonfire increase your damage done and reduce the damage you take by 1% for 8 seconds, stack up to 3 times. 3% damage modifier, similar to Blood Death Knight. For 4-set bonus, arcane damage you deal is increased by 5%, and bleed damage you deal is increased by 5%. Now you've got a hero talent build focused around arcane and lunar side, and you've got one that's focused around more physical abilities. So this is likely leaning into benefiting from both sides. Playing it on the safer side, I would say, for Guardian Druid, but it's just going to be increasing your overall throughput. Nothing too spectacular with this one. For Resto Druid, regrowth, wild growth, and swift mend healing is increased by 10%. So this is likely valuable in all content. It's targeting swift mend, it's targeting regrowth, talking wild growth for PvE. Your 4-piece is going to be your healing is increased by 8% when consuming Soul of the Forest bonus, and for 6 seconds afterwards. Now that's really powerful because generally, at least in PvP, you're using Cenarian Ward and then using Soul of the Forest around its timing, and if you benefit the healing towards Cenarian Ward even further, this is going to give you a tremendous amount of throughput. Now it is not particularly targeting directly at Life Bloom, like it's going to give 8% of Life Bloom, but this one isn't targeting Life Bloom, so maybe it's not going to be over the top for Resto Druid in PvP, but it seems like a solid pick. It's going to benefit wild growth in PvE. It's overall playing it safe, probably just a really solid set bonus for the game across the board. For Evokers, Augmentation, Upheaval is going to deal 30% increased damage. Got to keep our eyes on this ability just one-shotting people because it's what it did the first time it came out. So modifiers to it already send up red flags for me. And increases the damage of your next 2 Eruption casts by 30%. Now, I do like that, buffing up the sustained damage abilities afterwards. I think that's a solid bonus effect. For the 4-piece, Ebon Might increases primary stats by an additional 0.4% of your own. Every 2 seconds, it remains active up to 2%. It's going to be crazy desirable in PvE. Insanely desirable in PvE. Just so many main stats onto Ebon Might, and also probably really powerful in PvP as well. This is a really solid set bonus for Augmentation across the board. Fits into the niche of what it is, although I'm not a big fan of support specs. I think it does fit the niche well. It's got nice synergies between burst and sustained damage. Solid set bonus combination overall. For Devastation Evoker, Disintegrate damage increased by 10% and Pyre damage increased by 10%. I don't know if Disintegrate, at least in PvP, really needed this, but okay. 4-set bonus, Eternity Surge cooldown is decreased by 5 seconds, and it now grants Essence Burst. So you get a big guaranteed combo when you use Eternity Surge for a Disintegrate that's going to do a bunch of extra damage. So playing it safer on this side. No like real kind of intricate synergies here, just a little bit cooldown reduction on damage outside of your Deep Breath, which is honestly really nice for PvP. So I think this is a solid set bonus across the board. Pyre damage for AoE situations. Eternity Surge is obviously good, and getting Essence Burst is good in PvE, so I think it's solid set bonus for the game as a whole. Preservation Evoker, Reversion and Emerald Blossom heal an injured ally within 30 yards for 10% of any amount healed. Okay, so just a little bit of extra cleave AoE healing. This is going to be really good in PvE, I think. Generally, like cleave and AoE healing is really desirable. In Arena, maybe not so much. Maybe Battlegrounds is going to be very minor. But the 4-piece, Verdant Embrace, increases the healing of your next reversion by 200%, is disgustingly good. You're going to have to really pay attention in PvP when Evokers use Verdant Embrace and who they've used their reversion on and try and remove it, because this is going to be a really powerful hot. Not to mention that if it's buffed by 200%, it's also going to cleave AoE for extra healing, which could be substantial in Arena. I think this is a pretty solid one. Doesn't really line up with like the power of the Instant Living Flame, but I'm not 100% certain if that Instant Living Flame is actually just a baseline talent now. It was a previously a set bonus, but it might actually be a baseline talent. I'll have to double check on that a little bit, or somebody plays Preservation and knows. Please let us know in the comments down below, but it seems like a decent set bonus nonetheless. For Hunter, Barbed Shot further increases your pet's attacks by 5%, or attack speed. Your pet's attacks have a 10% chance to increase all pet damage you deal by 10% for 10 seconds. I think there's some attack speed PvP talents that could have a lot of synergy with this, and the fact that it's pet attacks increase pet damage, and with how many pets you're going to be summoning out. And they just made a big post saying that they're going to be doing a Hunter talent tree rework, so this could have some really scary, powerful synergies as well with whatever they're cooking up in the future for Hunters more specifically. Seems like a solid, safe line to cross here, where I don't think it's going to create too many problems as far as like selecting hero talents, just very basic across the class. For Marksmanship Hunter, Arcane and Multi-Shot damage increased by 20%, and the 4-piece Consuming Precise Shots increase the damage of your next aimed shot by 10%, stacking up to 2 times. So it's a little bit of damage modifiers around aim shot and arcane shot. Those are powerful abilities, generally speaking, at the moment in PvP, so it's likely going to be pretty valuable in PvP. They did make sure to include multi-shot, and I think with trick shot, aim shots bouncing around, it's likely going to be pretty powerful effects in PvE and across the board. Seems like a decent set bonus combination for the game. For Survival Hunter, Wildfire Bomb damage increased by 5%, playing it very safe here. Mongoose Bite or Raptor Strike deals 10% increased damage to a target's affected by Wildfire Bomb. This is going to be really powerful in PvP. Mongoose Bite is the main source of burst damage, and synergizing with Wildfire Bomb, this is going to likely feel really good. Although Mongoose Bite is a more single target oriented, I'm not sure specifically with Survival if there's like AoE talent synergies you can get with this at all in PvE. I don't think there are, so it might be weaker on a little bit on the weaker side for PvE, but for PvP it's going to be really strong. For Mage, Arcane Blast and Arcane Explosion damage increased by 6%. Now, do know they're completely changing Arcane, the way that works. You got to have procs to shoot Arcane missiles. You can't just spam them all the time like you can anymore. So you're going to be using Arcane Blast and probably Explosion a lot more. Casting Arcane Blast or Arcane Explosion has a 10% chance to make your next Arcane Barrage deal 10% more damage and generate 4 charges. And if it generates 4 charges and you shoot another barrage, and you have a chance to proc Arcane Orbs, which can give you 4 charges to proc more Arcane Barrages, this might be bringing back a very similar playstyle to Legion, where you're spamming Arcane Explosion and then just shooting out barrages and constantly proccing. This could be really powerful, likely in all content, right? Because it can give you great AoE in Mythic Plus and PvE, but also some decent burst damage when it comes to PvP. So I think this is a pretty good set bonus overall. It's bringing back flavors that I think, personally, I liked for Arcane from older expansions. Fire Mage Phoenix Flames damage is just going to be increased by 10%, and the amount is increased to 25% on its primary target, so more single target focus here. After dealing damage, Phoenix Flames has a 10% chance to return to you, refunding 1% of the cooldown of Phoenix Flames and granting you 6% increased spell damage. So a little bit of extra damage. I don't know what this 1% of the cooldown is. What is 1% of its cooldown? Like 1 second, 2 seconds or something? That's a very weird number. Maybe that's just a typo or just a misnomer, but I'm sure once this number is sorted out that this seems like a pretty decent set bonus overall when it comes to fire. Now, the Frost set bonus, I think they were inspired by Cataclysm. Ice Lance damage increased by 5%. Fingers of Frost is going to increase the damage of your next Frozen Orb by 10%, stacking up to 10 times, so a 100% increased Frozen Orb hit. And your 4-piece is just Frozen Orb increases the damage of Ice Lance, so they're feeding into each other for a nice little powerhouse engine. So if you like that Cataclysm Frost Mage playstyle, or the Ice Lance playstyle from Dragonflight, which I actually, that was my favorite patch to play Frost Mage, I think this is definitely going to be able to deliver on that, although maybe Frozen Orb won't be, even at 100%, it might not be that scary in PvP, but in PvE, this is, I think, going to feel pretty good as well. For Brewmaster Monk, Blackout Kick and Keg Smash deal 20% additional damage, and Shuffle also grants 3% damage reduction. Somebody just decided it's going to be 3% for all the tanks, I guess, but Keg Smash doing 20% more damage is like really good. Blackout Kick increases your damage dealt by 1% for 15 seconds. Again, this 1% seems really weird and arbitrary. Stacking up to 3, and has a chance to reset the cooldown of Keg Smash and make it cost no energy. So the cooldown reduction, these types of things, are likely going to be really powerful set bonuses. Maybe makes Brewmaster viable, like we saw at one point in Dragonflight and PvP, but it's going to be really fun in PvE to just be smashing out big Keg Smashes and resetting them and smashing them out even more. I think this is going to be a really fun set bonus for anybody that plays Brewmaster. For Mistweaver Monk, Enveloping Mist and Renewing Mist healing increased by 10%. Playing it pretty safe here. Vivify extends the duration of Renewing Mist and Enveloping Mist on its primary target by 2 seconds up to 4 seconds. You are going to have to use Vivify. I personally don't know how frequently you're using Vivify in PvE or PvP at the moment. Like as a Fist Weaver monk, I don't think you're using very much, and they're really orienting you around Fist Weaving. So not sure how much you're really going to be able to take advantage of this, given that. And if any plays Mist Weaver obviously more than I do and can tell me that, oh no, this is actually insane, let me know in the comments down below. But it's not standing out insanely to me at the moment. Windwalker, Tiger Palm increases the damage of your next melee ability by 5%. Your other melee abilities increase the damage of your next Tiger Palm by 25%, stacking up to 6 times. 15% of Tiger's Palm damage is also going to be dealt to nearby enemies, reduced beyond 5. So they've covered their bases to make sure it's got AoE. It's got stacking up massive modifier effects. This could be really scary and potentially problematic. This one is definitely standing out at the moment as one of the outliers here. Windwalker looking very scary. For Paladin, Holy Shock's healing is increased by 10% and its cooldown is reduced by 10%. That's some nice synergies to get some procs here. And they're changing the infusion of light and how it's working, I think, in this expansion. So that could be really good. 4-piece, Holy Shock increases the initial healing of your next Word of Glory or Light of Dawn by 8%, stacking up to 4 times. So with the cooldown reduction, stacking it up and getting big Word of Glories, Holy Paladin likely eaten pretty good here with these set bonuses. It seems really good. And they covered their bases. It's got Light of Dawn for PvE as well. So I really do like that they're considering, I would say for pretty much every set bonus, they've pretty strongly considered all aspects of the game and got them covered in ways that are going to be fun and powerful in both. So this is pretty good so far, I would say. For Prot Paladin, Shield of the Righteous deals 10% increased damage and grants 3% damage reduction. They really like that 3% for the tanks. Casting a Holy Power ability increases the damage and healing you deal during your Avenging Wrath by 0.5%. This effect stacks. This could be crazy. I'm trying to remember the hero talents for Prot. I haven't really not spent too much time on Prot. If they can get the infinite wings like Rhett can. I don't know if they've got the Sunspot talent tree or not. If they do, then my God, this is going to scale pretty nasty. This is going to scale pretty nasty. I think that's going to be really powerful. For Rep Palette, at least when it comes in PvE. I'm not too certain about PvP, obviously, for this. I don't think it's going to be too great. For Ret, Blade of Justice damage increased by 15%, and Wake of Ashes damage increased by 10%. Wonder how that works when Wake of Ashes is replaced by the hero talents, because I think there's a hero talent that where Wake of Ashes turns into something else. Is it going to be modified by this? Wake of Ashes increases your damage done by 10% as well for 8 seconds. They're likely focusing around Blade of Justice and Expurgation and probably some sort of dot playstyle here, because that's where some of the hero talents are leaning heavily into with this one. This is the one that I think is like the first one where it feels kind of biased towards like specific talents or specific builds, as opposed to a lot of the other specs that I'm a bit worried is going to like auto lock people into that. But I mean, at the end of the day, when you're min-maxing, you're probably going to be auto-locked into a build anyways. For Priest, Discipline, you're getting 5% more Atonement Healing. Smite and Penance increases the damage of your next Mind Blast by 25%. Or Absorb amount of your next Powered Shield by 15%. And it stacks up to 3 times. Oh my God, you're going to have massive powered shields. They tried to include Mind Blast as well, I think, for anyone who's playing like the Shadow Covenant build who wants to be doing damage with the Mind Bender. So they're trying to cover their bases there on both sides. And with the Void talent trees as well, this is going to be really fun. I think this is going to be really fun with this one. They played it safe with the 2-piece bonus, but the 4-piece one could be really good. Holy Priest, Serendipity is just 10% more effective. And I believe this is like your Holy Word cooldown reduction. Forgive me if I'm mistaken with this. Or if this is like the extra proc heal from your mastery, I'm not sure. Heal, Flash Heal, and Prayer of Healing has a 50% chance to cast again at 35% effectiveness. So just getting, you know, RNG chance that the heal heals 35% more. They play it pretty safe with this one. But it covered their bases again. They've got AoE covered and single target as well. Not focusing too much around the instant spells though. So it might be on the weaker side in PvP because of that. For Shadow, the duration of Devouring Plague is going to be increased by 1 second. And Devouring Plague increases your damage done by 2% for 10 seconds. Multiple applications may overlap. I'm curious to see how that plays. If you can like stack like a bunch of Devouring Plagues together and just absolutely chomp somebody apart, it's entirely possible. For Rogue, Assassination, when your bleeds deal damage, they have a chance to grant you Vile Tincture for 8 seconds, increasing your poison damage by 1% per stack, up to 10. So poison damage is going to be really important here. For Assassination, while you have a 5 or more stack of Vile Tincture, Garrote, Rupture, and Crimson Tempest will also deal 10% more damage. So this cover their base. They got the AoE, they got the single target. This is likely going to be a really powerful bonus. You're going to pray to God you got some Poison Cleansing Totem on your team in PvP for this one. If it ends up scaling to be that nasty, I think poison removal is going to be super important against Assassination, but it fits nice with the flavor of the spec. Outlaw Rogue, your Sinister Strike, Pistol Shot, and Ambush have a 20% chance to Ethereal Rampage, dealing 15% increased damage as Shadow. Now, does that mean the entire spell just is converted into shadow damage? Because that could be really good for PvP. If an entire pistol shot during your burst window and your shadow dance, or even some ambushes or just generic sinister strikes doing shadow damage on plate targets, can be really good for PvP. Ethereal Rampage additionally increases the damage of your next between the eyes by 6%, second up to 3 times. Again, now this is another thing that seems is like favoring a little bit more towards, like, I think it's Crack Shot on the talent tree for Outlaw, where you're focusing in that shadow dance window that's particularly played in PvP. I don't know how much in PvE it is. But this does seem kind of doubling down on that. But it's doubling down on a fun playstyle that feels unique to Outlaw, and it's giving them this cool shadow effect. I think it's going to be really powerful and interesting. So I actually really like this one for Outlaws. Hopefully I don't change it, even though it does seem to be a little bit biased towards that build specifically. For Subtlety, Symbols of Death increases the damage of your next Secret Technique by 20%. We've seen how scary this ability is in PvP. Secret Technique increases the damage of your other finishing moves by 16% for 7 seconds. That's going to be broken OP. That's going to be broken OP. Every single thing that was said in that in PvP is going to be disgusting. And Secret Technique is AoE in PvE, so it's probably going to be pretty good there as well. Okay, that's one of the most disgusting ones. Subtlety Rogues, you guys are coming back from death. You guys were gone from the game for a while. You might be coming back from death with this one. Now for Shaman, Elemental Blast / Earth Shock is going to deal 25% more damage, and Earthquake is just going to deal 25% more damage. Playing it safe with this one. 4-piece bonus spending, Maelstrom grants you 5% increased critical strike chance and 10% increased critical strike damage dealt, so Lava Burst basically. Now I think this is going to play more for Farseer, because I feel like the Lightning one is really focused more around lightning spells and Tempest, and this doesn't really, you know, synergize as well, because I'm not sure if, I can't remember if Tempest is 100% crit chance or not, but the fact that Lava Burst is, like, it gets a huge benefit from crit damage dealt, so I think this is leaning a little bit more into Lava Burst builds and a lot less into Lightning builds, so the Lightning build might not be as viable, given that this is going to have a big modification effect on the Lava Burst build. For enhancement, Storm Strike, Lava Lash, Ice Strike, and Crash Lightning are just going to deal 15% increased damage. They really covered the bases here. They got the cleave and the single target. These are all abilities, ignoring maybe Storm Strike, depending on if you're playing Doomwinds or not in the next expansion. I'm not sure what build exactly Enhance is going to be going for, but all the spells are covered, so whichever it is going to be benefiting from this. And Feral Spirits are just going to last 100% longer. Does this include procced Feral Spirits? If this includes the procced ones, then... And there was a Feral Spirit build, I think, when I tested it recently on Enhance. This could be really nasty. So a lot of core abilities and cooldown or uptime could be really good here. For Restoration, this is probably one of the worst ones. I thought Boomkin was the worst one, but I think Resto Shaman might be the worst. Tidal Waves is going to increase the healing of the affected spell by 10%. I believe that's when you Riptide, the next like 2 healing waves or healing surges are increased. It's a very not too great of an effect, at least when it comes to PvP. Tidal Waves is 80% more effective, though, and reduces the mana cost of the spells by 8%. So maybe this is actually maybe not that bad. Maybe the 4-piece just saved the 2-piece. Because if it makes the casted heal insane, then it might not be too bad. But generally, when I'm looking for Resto Shaman, at least when it comes to PvP, is usually targeting Healing Stream or Riptide. Usually when those abilities are tuned very high, Resto Shaman is powerful in PvP, and this is targeting casting healing, which is generally harder to accomplish, but because it's such a huge modifier on it, it may still end up being viable with this specifically. Now for Warlock Affliction, Malefic Rapture damage is increased by 5% and its crit chance is increased by 10%. Malefic Rapture has a chance to increase the damage dealt by your Agony, Corruption, and Unstable Affliction by 15%. So really big synergies here. One of the hero talent trees that I was actually just playing on my Aflock on the beta seems like it probably benefits a bit more from this. The one where you like summon a demon when you Malefic Rapture behind you. It's in my Affliction Warlock video. I'll have linked at the end of this one if you want to see that more specifically. Playing it safe with this one, just flat throughput increases focused around Malefic Rapture. For Demonology Warlock, I don't know what it is, but they love Shadow Bolt. I don't know why they've just absolutely infatuated with Shadow Bolt, and they've got to put it in everything. They're like, here's a Shadow Bolt, here's more Shadow Bolt, we're giving you Shadow Bolt. So if you're a Demonology Warlock and you don't like Shadow Bolt, I'm sorry. You're getting Shadow Bolts in your stockings for Christmas. Like, it's just happening. You got to deal with it. Your primary demon is going to deal 5% increased damage, and your Shadow Bolt damage is increased by 50%. Shadow Bolt has a chance to enrage your primary Felguard, increasing the damage of their next Legion strike by 300%. Destruction Warlock, Incinerate critical strike chance increased by 20%, and Conflagrate critical strike chance increased by 25%. And when Conflagrate critically strikes, your fire damage increased by 5% for 6 seconds. I was reviewing Destro a lot and talking about Rain of Fire builds. I think this synergy with the set bonus is likely locking that in, like Incinerate spamming and summoning in extra rifts and Rain of Fire and cleaving targets down while summoning demons in is likely going to be the main play style, at least in PvE. With seeing what's happening here, this is going to be really strong at PvE, but even in PvP, this might see some play as well. A bit worried about Arena though. I think in smaller group content, something like this could likely fall off, but Battlegrounds, you're going to be really nasty with the new rated solo queue Battlegrounds coming through. For Warrior, we've got Mortal Strike and Cleave increases the damage of your next Overpower by 10%. Play it really safe here. When Overpower has its cooldown reset by Tactician, your next Mortal Strike or Cleave, so covering their bases, they got single target and AoE, has its damage increased by 10% and critical strike chance increased by 10%, stacking up to 2 times. I think that's going to have a lot of flavor here. These abilities already had a lot of flavor, you know, with Overpower buffing up Mortal Strike. Now it's going to be vice versa as well. So I think that's a pretty solid set bonus. Should be fun in all content in the game. For Fury Warrior, Bloodthirst increases the damage of your next Rampage by 10%. Really safe here. When Raging Blow resets its own cooldown, the damage of your next Bloodthirst is increased by 10%, stacking up to 2 times. Another one that's just really straightforward, really safe. Not so much Cleave, though, involved with this, except for the Rampage with Whirlwinds. A little bit with the AoE Rampage here, but Bloodthirst, not so much AoE here with the 4P, so might not be as great, I think, for PvE, given the AoE is a little bit lower. But in PvP, these are just targeting core ability, so it's likely going to be, you know, it's going to work in that environment of the game. And finally, for Prot Warrior, when Shield Slam cooldown is reset by Strategist, you gain Expert Strategist, increasing the damage of Shield Slam by 5%, and of course 3% damage reduction. Shield Slam critical strikes increase the damage dealt by Thunderclap and Revenge by 10%. So that's going to be really fun in PvE. Getting that big beefed up Shield Slam, and then getting the next Thunderclap's going to hit really hard. I think that's likely going to be really fun here for PvE. Pretty safe, pretty standard set bonus here. I think, you know, considering what they're trying to do with this, where the set bonuses are playing on the safer side, not trying to impact too much as far as like talents, so you can just explore hero talent synergies with the core baseline talent trees, that likely they're going to be really powerful. Some outliers with Windwalker and Demon Hunter, but on the whole, I think these are really good set bonuses. So I'm really excited to continue to test the War Within. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.